Okay, boys and girls, yesterday we learned about how to write the introduction to a literary essay. And today what we're going to do is we're going to move on and we're going to talk about how we would write our body paragraphs. So go ahead and turn to the next available page and put today's date in the corner. You have already planned your essay, so you already know what your three main ideas are going to be. And hopefully you've already chosen many examples. But before we move on to our body paragraph, I want to just take a minute and teach you something that you should always make sure that you're doing before you begin your body paragraph. Essayists ask themselves questions when they're looking at the details that they're going to use. Okay, so go ahead and start your chart in your journal, in your notebook. So when choosing an example, essayists ask. So the very first question you want to ask yourself when you're looking at your bullets or your details: can I point to specific events or details that support my main idea? If you think back to the introduction that I wrote yesterday, my first main idea had to do with the fact that Booker did not allow obstacles to stand in his way. So the first question I'm going to ask myself is, can I point to specific events or details in that story? Were there specific events and details in that story that support the main idea that Booker did not allow obstacles to stand in his path? And I can. I can point to the fact that even though in the village that Booker lived in, nobody read except for that newspaper man who obviously did not live there. He came there to visit. And even though his mother or anybody else in his family could not read, and even though he didn't have any books to teach himself with, he didn't go to school, he still kept pursuing his quest to learn how to read. Those were the specific details that I'm going to include in my body paragraph. Now, the other question that an essayist is going to ask is, can I explain exactly how these events or details support my main idea? So two things that you are supposed to do when you're writing your body paragraph are pointing, first off, to specific events or details in the text that supports your main idea. But then you also need to explain exactly how these events or details support it. So you're doing two parts. You're stating it or citing it, either quoting it or paraphrasing it, or summarizing it. In the instance of books, you might also summarize. But then you're also going to explain how this supports it. That's where the elaboration comes in. You're not just stating the facts that you found in the text, but you're elaborating on them. You're saying more about them in order to help your reader to see what you're talking about, in order to help your reader see how you're connecting and supporting your main idea. How does this prove your main idea? Okay, so I wanted to show you how you would do that by modeling for you a body paragraph. Now, we've already talked about how one of my main ideas was that Booker did not allow obstacles to stand in his way. Okay, so for example, when I go to write, this is going to be my first body paragraph. I'm going to begin with a transitional phrase. First, and then a comma. Now, guys, a lot of you are capitalizing the word after the comma. The transitional phrase is part of the sentence. It's not separate. The only time you're going to capitalize the next word after the comma is if it's a proper noun. And in this case, I am going to use a proper noun. Booker, and you go ahead and write this in your notebook so you have a reference to a sample. Booker does not let obstacles stop him from pursuing his dream. Now remember, if I have properly planned my essay, this would have been a sentence in one of the boxes that I had on my planning sheet. And remember, we want to make sure our boxes are complete sentences, because if you don't write a complete sentence on your planning sheet, most likely when you start writing, you will forget to convert that into a sentence. I saw some examples of that when I was scoring your writing. Okay, now I'm going to start. Remember what it said in my notebook, the specific events and details. Now, if you remember from your transitional phrase chart that's in your binder, you're supposed to use another transitional phrase when you introduce evidence. In this case, I'm going to say, for example, and again, after the transitional phrase, we have the comma. For example, very few people in his community know how to read. Now, remember, I'm giving the example, but I need to say more. You're going to assume that your reader has never read this story. You're not going to retell the whole story, but you are going to make sure that you give them enough information that they understand what it is, what you're talking about. Okay, just enough information. So I'm going to say, in the story, and again, I'm going to refer to text evidence, the newspaper man reads the newspaper out loud to the people in the village. Now remember, I'm still wanting to say more. The second question that we had was, how can I explain, or can I explain exactly how this event or detail supports my bullet? This shows that they cannot read. The text also says, she can't read it herself. And notice that I have quotation marks around my evidence that I'm quoting directly from the text. Whenever I lift words from the text, I need to make sure I put them in quotation marks so that my reader knows it's a direct quote. These are not my own words, they came from the text. This refers to Booker's mother. Showing that she is unable to read. Okay, so far 2 obstacles, right? 2 obstacles in his path. Nobody in his community, including his mother, are able to read. Another obstacle is the fact that Booker does not go to school. Now, how do I know that? I know that because in the story, he works all day. At the salt mill. Remember, talked about him leaving before the sun was up and traveling in the dark. And coming home, it was dark again. So he worked all day in the salt mill. The lack of schooling and the inability of others in his community to read are obstacles in his way. So notice how I'm saying more. I'm saying more about the evidence. I'm saying more about the events and the specific details. I'm not just throwing the evidence and specific details into a paragraph, but I am elaborating on them. I am clearly demonstrating to my reader that these support. Now, remember what we do when we get to the end of a body paragraph. We need to restate what we've been talking about, obstacles, and connect it somehow to the main idea, which is that he's continuing to go on to his dream, not the main idea, I'm sorry, but the thesis statement, which is that he is determined to reach his goal. Okay, so I want to end with a sentence that mentions both of those. Even without someone to teach him how to read, Booker is determined to reach his goal. Okay, so a lot of a review of the same structure we've been using throughout our body paragraphs. We begin with a transitional phrase and our main idea sentence. We provide evidence, introducing our evidence by using transitional phrases such as, for example, another example, in addition to this example, okay, in the text, in the story. And then we say more. We explain it. What does this mean? Sure, it says she cannot read, or she can't read it herself. What does that mean? What is that telling you as a reader? And how does that show you that he's determined? How is that? In our case, that is one of the obstacles in the way. He doesn't let the obstacles stop him. And then when we get to the end of the paragraph, we need to connect our main idea, what we've been talking about, to our thesis statement. In my case, it's that Booker is determined to reach his goal. He's a determined person. Okay, so today you're going to start writing your body paragraphs in your notebook. Skip lines like I did so that if you need to go back and revise, you have room to do that. When you finish your first body paragraph, move on to your second, and then to your third. And if you get all the way through all three of your body paragraphs, you can refer to your checklist to write your conclusion. Okay, I will be doing a mini lesson on conclusions tomorrow so that you will have it, and I will upload it to the YouTube channel so that you'll be able to look at it. Okay, so go ahead and make your way back to your seat, please, and begin writing your body paragraphs.